Merry Christmas, everyone, for all of you out there. I hope you had a wonderful and beautiful Christmas or happy Hanukkah with your families. This has been one of those years where I think as we reflect on everything, we just say to ourselves, like, wow, thank God there's only a couple of weeks left until it's over, right? That's like, it's just been one of those years. But today, actually, something very special has happened this year. Something that I believe had ended this year, at least for me and for the families that I'm going to bring on the show today, ended on a high note. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit about that. This deals with the pardons given by President Donald Trump this year to former Border Patrol agents Ignacio Nacho Ramos, Jose Compean, and Gary Brugman, all three of whom played a very special part and still do in my life. This is going to be one of those shows, folks, that is just going to blow your mind, because for many of you, you've forgotten about these stories. We're going to tell you about them here. We're going to explain why they were pardoned. We're going to explain to you how their story affects us even till today. But first, before we go any further, I want to talk to you about Amac. Today's podcast is brought to you by Amac. Amac offers the alternative to just about every benefit that AARP offers, but without all the liberal agenda, folks, without any of that liberal agenda. Go to amac.us/Carter, that's CARTER, and join today. Okay, without any further delay, I told you I was going to tell you a little bit about, before I bring them on, Ignacio Nacho Ramos, his lovely wife, Monica, Jose Compean, his wife, Patty, and their families, their children, and Gary Brugman, who is a dear friend and somebody who has really suffered quite a bit. All three of them, in fact, have a story to tell that is just going to blow your minds. And it began actually during the Bush administration. And all of their stories took place in Texas. I was a very young journalist working for the Inland Valley Daily Bulletin. I had covered a number of stories and had just won some of my biggest awards covering basically Inland Valley gangs, Latino gangs, east of Los Angeles, mainly in our neighborhoods, which were like San Bernardino, Ontario, Pomona, Montclair, California, all of that. And I remember telling my editor at the time, Frank Pine, and Steve Sullivan, I said to them, I would love to cover the U.S.-Mexico border, because I had covered gangs so much in our community and social justice issues. I thought, where are these narcotics coming from? How are they entering like the lifeline, the bloodstream of our communities and our children and the high schools? And I said, as I did my investigations, of course, a lot of the local gangs, they'd point towards Mexico. That's where a lot of the methamphetamine, some of it was being made, of course, in San Bernardino County, but cocaine, marijuana, everything else, anything you could think of, weapons, all kinds of contraband that were being controlled either by Mexican drug cartels on the southern side of the border, or La M, which was connected to Mexican drug cartels. And I'd already been interested, by the way, frankly, in what was happening along our 2,000-mile U.S.-Mexico border, because I believed, and I proved through all the stories, and everyone else has since, the porousness of our border was a national security issue. So I went down to the U.S.-Mexico border. Frank Pine and Steve said, hey, Sara, go. Just bring us back the best stories. And I started in basically at the border of San Diego and Tijuana border, and went all the way up through Texas. On my way up to Texas, and I'd already been contacted by people, that saw some of the stories I was writing at the time. And I was told about these two Border Patrol agents, Ignacio Nacho Ramos and Jose Compean. In fact, it was a small story. It was a little story in the paper in Texas about these two Border Patrol agents that allegedly violated the civil rights of Mexican illegal immigrant, and they were being charged with shooting at this person and actually shooting them in the buttocks, in the back end, and that they were going to be sentenced, that they had been convicted, and then they were awaiting their sentencing. And I just thought, wow, I should talk to these folks. I should see if they'll talk to me. I should write about this because this is very interesting to me, how our law enforcement was dealing with, people that were crossing the border. I didn't know the whole story yet, but I started looking into it. And I did talk to Monica Ramos on the phone. And I think I also spoke to her father at the time. And I tried to run into Nacho while I was going up the border. I couldn't meet with him then. And then on the way back, I was in El Paso. I thought I'd just give it one more shot, just one more shot. And I picked up the phone and I called, and Monica said, you know what? I think my husband will meet you, but I don't know if he's going to give you a story. I said, well, I can't do a story unless he talks to me. And that day changed everything. They came down. I remember we met at a Starbucks in El Paso along the border. I had been in Juarez. I had been in and out of Nuevo Laredo. I was covering most of the cartel wars along the U.S.-Mexico border. It was a really scary time. And it actually opened up my eyes to the corruption on both sides of the border. And here comes this man, Nacho Ramos, who was just humble and kind, and his wife, and they had a baby at the time and their children. And it was just, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to think. This wonderful human being who actually started talking to me. We got along. I was telling him about my work on the border. And finally he said, you know what? I'm going to tell you my story. I want to tell you my story. And I wrote that story. I actually have it right in front of me right now on August 6, 2006. It was it was a story that I titled Breaking the Silence. Convicted border agents tell their story. And the story is going to blow you away. Hope you go to SaraACarter.com and read that story. I reposted it there. It was from the Inland Valley Daily Bulletin. I reposted my story there, and I'm going to read you the top of this story. And then I'm going to tell you how Gary came into my life, because he was also convicted. Gary actually spent 2 years plus of his life in Yazoo State Penitentiary for doing his job. And I'll have them all explain it to you when they come on. But here's the opening of my story. Border Patrol agent Ignacio Ramos could hear his heart racing. He could feel the dry, hot dust burning against his skin as he chased a drug trafficker trying to flee back into Mexico. This guy had like $1 million. I'm taking a little segue here. A marijuana in this van, street value. Ramos' fellow agent, Jose Alfonso Compean, was lying on the ground behind him, banged up and bloody from a scuffle with the much bigger smuggler moments earlier. Suddenly, the smuggler turned toward the pursuing Ramos, gun in hand. Ramos, his own weapon already drawn, shot at him, though the man was able to flee into the brush and escape the agents. Now, nearly 18 months after that violent encounter, Ramos and Compean are facing 20 years in federal prison for their actions. Why? According to the U.S. attorney who successfully prosecuted the agents, the man they were chasing didn't actually have a gun. Shooting him in the back violated his civil rights. The agents didn't know for a fact that he was a drug smuggler, and they broke Border Patrol rules about discharging their weapons and preserving a crime scene. Even more broadly, Assistant U.S. Attorney Deborah Kanoff said Ramos and Compean had no business chasing someone in the first place. It's a violation of Border Patrol regulations to go after someone who is fleeing, she said. That's what she told me. The Border Patrol pursuit policy prohibits the pursuit of someone. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the predicament that our Border Patrol agents and federal agents have been placed in when they are told that their job, which is to protect the U.S.-Mexico border, prohibited them from chasing a suspected drug dealer, or could have been anybody, could have been a human trafficker, could have been a terrorist. They were told that they could not chase this person. When I heard that come out of Deborah Kanoff's mouth, I about passed out. I couldn't believe it. I was thinking to myself, is this real? Is this really happening? Is this really happening? Is this person actually telling me this? Yeah, they did. They did. And that changed my life. That story right then was the beginning of a long 2.5 year battle. 2.5 year battle to get, in the very end, President Bush commuted both of their sentences. By the way, Ramos and Compean were put before a very biased and very hardened jury. They were sentenced to 12 and 13 years. In the end, their sentences were commuted. It was a huge celebration. But Gary Brugman was not so lucky. He didn't have anyone to tell his story at the time. He spent 2 years of his life in Yazoo. Yeah, suffering. And by the way, the same with Ramos, with Nacho Ramos and Jose Compean. They also spent time in prison for doing their job, for trying to protect the U.S.-Mexico border. And this is going to get far worse. Trust me. That border, President Trump was right. President Trump was right when he's tightening restrictions at the border, putting up the border wall, because the cartels understand and they know how to operate and manipulate. And they know what's going on at our border, and they know who is a president and what kind of lackadaisical rules are going to happen. That's why it affects us today. Our federal law enforcement agents, their lives are on the line. Every time they go to do their job, every time they're at that U.S.-Mexico border, or every time they're dealing with drug dealers, every time our DEA crosses the border and works with Mexican federales, they never even know if they're on the take. These are drug cartels with billions of dollars, guys. I mean, this is hundreds of millions. Billions of dollars circulating around the planet of drug money, right? Their tools and equipment and everything is so far exceeds even our federal law enforcement in certain cases. Just ask. But President Trump saw that. He read through the documents. He understood, and his team understood, that these men were innocent and that they deserve a second chance, that they deserve to be a part of our great society again. You know, everybody asked me, why do you think Johnny Sutton, but at the time, Johnny Sutton, it was all three of them were convicted under the Western District of Texas with Johnny Sutton. Johnny Sutton actually worked for President George Bush when he was governor. And this prosecutor was tough. He was you would think like a Republican. I want you to think about the time frame. During that time, Bush was trying to pass an immigration reform package. They didn't want anything coming out about that border. These prosecutors along the U.S.-Mexico border were just the same as any Democrat would have behaved. They were punishing our law enforcement officers. What do you think the message was across the board to every other federal law enforcement officer out there? Border Patrol agent working along the border. You go after a drug dealer, you chase them down, something goes sideways, you're going to jail, not the drug dealer. That was the message they were delivering. So guess what happened? And I believe it still happens to this day. You have federal agents sitting along the border that are like, you know what? It's not even worth it. Not even worth it. I am not going to put me or my family in jeopardy to stop a drug dealer or to stop someone when I'm out here by my lonesome, right? That's what they were saying. Stop a drug dealer when the government, my own government, is going to come after me. I saw that over and over and over again along the U.S.-Mexico border. I saw that with DEA agents who worked inside Mexico. I saw that with FBI agents who worked inside Mexico with the U.S. government and then were punished by their own government for doing their job. That is what these men are here to tell you. They are here to tell you their story. They are good men. They are amazing men, and their families are amazing. And what they have been through, God only knows. But 2020 may have been a really rough year for most of us, but at least it ended on a high note of justice for these men. And without any further delay, I'm going to bring on Ignacio Nacho Ramos, Jose Compean, and Gary Brugman, three former Border Patrol agents who are my heroes and people who have really served their country with distinction and never gave up hope and never gave up the fight. Guys, I'm so happy that you're all here and with me. I can't even begin to tell you. I feel like I'm actually gonna cry right now seeing all your faces. Nacho, Ignacio Ramos. So whenever I say do you like Ignacio or you like Nacho still? It's been a while since we've had a chance to talk.
matter. I go by both. It's always been not.
Not good, Nacho. So, and then Gary Brugman and Jose Compean. So I told everybody about your story in the opening, a little bit about how we all met. It's been a long time, Nacho and Jose, since we've talked. And I was telling everybody at the opening of the show, like, this has been one of the toughest years, for most of us, COVID, job loss, for a lot of folks, lockdowns. It's been really tough on everyone, but you've actually lived kind of in your own lockdowns, in your own, prisons, I feel like, since 2006. I mean, luckily, for both Jose and Nacho, you guys were commuted your sentences, but they should have been pardoned by President Bush. That's for sure back then. But,
right.
Gary, I know I've talked to Gary a lot, and maybe I'll let you start, Nacho, since we were on. But Gary, also, you spent a few years, in prison, and you never even had a chance. Like, you fought all these years to get the truth out, to tell your story. And this has been, this ended, I think the year ended, at least for me, with a sense of like closure, and for your stories, and a sense of like vindication and justice. I don't know. How do you feel, Nacho? Tell me.
Vindication, for sure. But it's definitely been a look back. That's basically what we've done in the last couple of days, especially with a lot of calls and texts that have come in, especially, with all the people that have supported us from the very beginning and helped us go through, especially calls to my wife, Monica, looking back at all the pictures that we did. Or actually, she and the kids did, because I was gone. I was already in prison, of course. And looking back at all the rallies that were going on, for people to make sure that they didn't forget about us. Because I think Gary, that's where you started too, right? You started attending the rallies.
Yeah, when I had gotten out of prison, I was working, and that's when I heard about your case in 2005, and actually 2006. And I was working, and I heard about your case, and my phone started ringing because apparently there was a congressional inquiry into your guys' case, into Johnny Sutton, and brought my case to light. So you guys brought my case. I was already done. I was already out of prison. I had done my time, and I was trying to move forward. And then I remember saying that when I was in prison, I wish there was one person out there fighting for me. And that's why I joined on. I started going El Paso with Monica, with your wife Monica, and Joe was the first one that I went to.
Right. So yeah, and so that's basically what I think the last week has been about for us. Because to be honest, it really hasn't settled in. I think it didn't hit me till like really 2 days later, having a conversation with my youngest son, because he's the one that in a way suffered the most through it, because he was the youngest.
Right.
And he's the one I did the least with.
Right.
And I was having a conversation with him, and Monica and I were driving. Luckily, she was driving. And after I got off the phone with him, it's like it hit me. And I turned around and looked at her, and I said, "Oh my God, I finally got my pardon." And I just couldn't. I couldn't control it anymore. The tears just flowed, and they flowed for a good 5 to 10 minutes. And I mean, it's been off and on since then, but nothing like that moment. And I think I'll have some more, but right now it's too much. There's been a lot of people here and there.
It's really
wanting to make content. Yes, it is. It's just too much input right now. So, and that's fine.
Was that like it for you, Jose? Was that the feeling? Has it hit you yet?
Kind of like the way Nacho said, just in bits and pieces, where it kind of started with Gary. Actually, he's the one who called me and said, "Hey, the White House is looking at your paperwork, your pardon. It's there. We're just waiting." And we're driving home, and I would say probably a couple minutes later, I got a text from him. I was still driving, so I didn't check it. Once we got home, we were in the driveway, and I pulled up my phone. It says, I think it said, apparently y'all got your pardon. And I just said, no way. And I told Patty and my daughter were in the car with me. And I just read it. And they both just screamed, like, no way. And I was like, yeah, that's what Gary said. And then I just got one right after. He says, Ed just confirmed. And I sat there probably a good 20 to 30 minutes just sitting in the car trying to call, family. And I couldn't even dial. They were the ones calling everybody for me and letting them know. And I just sat in the car and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's stunning to me too, because I remember even in the beginning when I first worked on the story, even before I met you, Gary, and it was so, I couldn't imagine how our Border Patrol agents, people would say to me, oh, this was under George Bush. And I said, yeah. I couldn't imagine how agents were treated and the difficulty of your jobs on the front line, that you would do so much to defend our country out there on the front line every single day, working hard, fighting, against the unexpected, because you just didn't know who you were going to run across on the border, and for me as a young, you never do. And as a young journalist, at that point in time, it was scary. It was like, I didn't understand how this could happen in America. It took a lot of research and then just, interviewing and talking to people. But I remember specifically, like when I was covering your story, Nacho and Jose, and then later you, Gary, like I would talk to agents all the time and they would say to me, it's like theater. It's like theater, because after what happened to Jose and Nacho and Gary, there were agents that didn't want to do their job anymore. They were like, right. I'm not going to do it. I'd rather just let people come in. I would rather not do it because I'm scared to death that I'm going to do my job and then I'm going to get convicted. Did you guys hear that a lot?
It opened a lot of eyes.
That's the bad part, because they wind up putting other agents at risk, not themselves, because they're willing to step back and let others take the lead. And that's what happened in Joe's and I's instance, because you saw the guys that just stood there and didn't do anything. And they're fine with that, because at the end of the day, nothing happens to them legally or physically. And they wind up putting other agents in jeopardy. And the sad part is now, even though we've received this pardon, is that you see a lot of agents happy for us. And in Joe's and I's case, I don't know if Joe's seen it. We're part of a group, or at least I am. And you saw some remarks, or at least I did. And a lot of agents are happy for us. And you still get the few still making their comments, and I get a kick out of it. And what's funny is that they're still parroting the same thing that was said years ago. And I'm like, after all these years, you think at least go a step above and educate yourself, because the stuff is out there.
Right.
By now, all the stuff that came out is out there. At least don't be an idiot. Educate yourself. And before you parrot the same stuff that was said years ago, go educate yourself so that you can say, before you say, these guys did this, these guys dishonored the Border Patrol. Find out what really happened. Find out who actually lied, because Joe and I never got charged with lying.
Right.
The obstruction of justice charge got overturned in the Fifth Circuit.
Right.
So, before you all say that, and before we have to live with anything, educate yourself and find out what actually happened. Find out what the government hid. Find out who in the government actually lied. The cream of the crop.
We know they lied. We know they lied, Nacho. I still remember to this day, getting a call, and I was telling Jose about it before we all got on the air, to talk. I got a call from a few congressmen who told me, and one of them was actually then Ted Poe, who fought for you guys, Congressman Ted Poe of Texas, and the Inspector General's office.
Thank you.
Say that you guys,
the top investigators, yes.
Yes.
And for the ones that do listen to your show, or for the ones that will finally get to this and hear it, and it branches off, and for the ones that have connections from Washington on down to sector and all that it gets to, listen up. The cream of the crop investigators refuse to go on record because they're the ones that were going to perjure themselves. But they're the ones that finally had to admit, and Johnny Sutton had to admit in the Fifth Circuit that they lied. So not only did the attorneys lie, OIG are the ones that lied. They had to admit it.
That's right. And a lot of people don't know all the details of this. You and Gary and Jose, and I during that time had to live through all this. We spent 2 years. I remember how terrified we were on the last night of President Bush's stay in office. I remember Monica calling me. Monica getting on the phone with me and saying, Sarah, I don't know. I don't think he's going to commute their sentences. You were both sitting in prison.
Mm-hmm.
You and Nacho and Jose, just for all of you out there that are listening to this, these two family men, sitting in prison, they had to be put in solitary confinement because they were being targeted by prisoners inside these prisons because they were law enforcement officers.
Well, they did get to me.
They did get to you. Explain that. Tell everybody about that experience because you had that similar experience, Gary, too, in prison. What happened to you, Nacho?
Well, I got there on a Monday. They found out who I was by Saturday. Saturday night, they sent 7 to my cubicle.
7 prisoners, other prisoners came into his cubicle.
And long story short, they beat the crap out of me, And, the prison guards were like pretty matter of fact about it, like, oh, well. And they didn't want to give me any help, even though I asked for it.
It's terrible.
And all they did was transfer me to.
When you go to prison, the first thing when I went to prison, the first thing they told me is you're no longer Agent Brugman, you're inmate Brugman. And to the inmates, you're a cop. You're a Fed. To the guards, you're an inmate. So you kind of.
And they relish in that. They relish in that too.
That's just some
guards relish in the fact that you're an ex-agent and that you're in there. Some are supportive. Some were really supportive, but others, they relish in the fact that you're an ex-Fed and that you're under their control now.
One of the things that I wanted to bring up here, because, it's very rare. This, you guys can't understand out there. For all of you listening, to have Jose, Gary, and Nacho here at the same time and to all be pardoned, it's like a miracle. It really is a miracle because I never imagined. I would pray for this all the time for you guys because when you know someone's story, you know what kind of person they are. Look at how they've lived their life over the last decade plus, almost 2 decades, right? For you, Gary, good citizens, have worked hard, always taking care of their families, always doing the right thing. These are not criminals. These are good people that tried to defend our country and did defend our country. And this was the payment that they got in return.
And we'll do it again.
That's it. I was just going to ask you, because this is the question. Everybody says, I say, how does this affect my life? This affects all of our lives. What happened to these Border Patrol agents happens every single day out on the front lines. These guys are fighting for us every single day. And like I said, there's some people that just took a step back. Nacho, you talked about them, and say, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to risk anything for, my family or myself, and let bygones be bygones and let whatever happens. But it's men like you, Jose, Nacho, and Gary, that put your lives on the front line every single day and did that and paid the price. Asking that question, each one of you, would you do it again? Would you serve your country again this way, in this capacity? Do you think there are any lessons to be learned here for other Border Patrol agents in the future?
I would leave again tomorrow if they let me, in whatever capacity there is. One of my plans is to get myself my Texas Peace Officer's license and be a reserve police officer somewhere and continue serving, because I got my legs chopped out from under me. I should have been able, I would have been eligible for retirement in February of 2018 at age 51 with 29 years of service, and I got nothing. So I want to continue serving because I never finished, and that's just for me, to continue serving the people. but it's still kind of crazy because people ask me why would you get back into law enforcement? Cops these days, I got a lot of friends other law enforcement in every capacity. They're like, dude, it's not the same. And it's like, yeah, but I never finished. I said I got an opportunity now, which is why I chose to wear this T-shirt today, free. Because I'm free. And I spoke to you Wednesday night. When after we found out, and that was Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas Eve, and I didn't drive again till Friday morning. That I was heading back to San Antonio from Fort Worth, and let me tell you, about 10 minutes into the drive, Sarah, the sky was bluer, the air was cleaner, and I'm driving down the road, and I'm like, I feel like a completely different person, and it was just for the first time. Next month, January 14th, would have been 20 years that I initially pushed this illegal alien on the ground, right? It'd be 20 years next month that started this whole chain reaction of things. And for the first time in 20 years, I finally enjoyed a beautiful day. And I told you that last time I was in your studio. I was like, 2020 is going to be my year. Remember? I told you that. I said 2020 is going to be my year.
He did, you guys. He did. He said 2020 is. I go, it's somebody's year because this 2020 is just. It wasn't. Right. I did not expect it to end on this high of a note. I did believe in my heart that if President Trump had an opportunity to see your stories, that the odds of you getting your pardons were way up. But I was like, is he going to get right in front of his desk? Is he going to understand it? Are they going to be able to explain it? Let me ask Nacho. Would you do it again, Nacho?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question. I would have liked to have gone out on my terms, but it is what it is. But that's because I did the job the way I felt it was the right way to do. I never held anything back. Some guys held back because they always were afraid of getting in trouble. But if you're going to do the job right, you have to risk that,
Right.
But more importantly is that what happened to me didn't stop my son from following his dreams. So I'm very proud to report that my middle son, Ryan, 2 weeks ago graduated from the Victoria Police Department. And very proud of him. So he'll be sworn in here in the next week, I believe.
Oh my gosh, congratulations, Nacho. That's great. I'm so proud of Ryan. That's great. That's awesome. And Jose, how about you? Would you do anything different? Would you go back in the Border Patrol? Do you?
Absolutely. It's just like these guys said. You wanna go out on your terms. You don't want somebody to end it for you.
That's right.
Just think about it, every day. I really hadn't thought about it. I'd probably say in about the last month and a half. I didn't want to get my hopes up again. And up until, we went down to Houston with these guys. We met down in Houston. I hadn't really thought about a lot of the stuff. And then just slowly things started coming back. I was telling you, Sarah, when the very first time I talked to you, sitting in that little office, that little room, when we sat down and talked, just telling somebody, I knew you would do your research and find out exactly what happened. And that's kind of like what Nacho said, where people say whatever they want. I always say, do the research before you run your mouth, look it up, do the research, find out what happened, and that's where a lot of people don't do that. And when I first talked to you, I knew you were going to do that, and that was the one thing where, just like I'm sure Nacho, Gary, we're all thankful, that.
Hey, Joe, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but as far as running their mouth and not doing the research, did you see the El Paso Times headline?
I did. That was pretty entertaining.
They contacted us wanting to do an interview. I'm like, there's no way I'm talking to El Paso Times. There's just no way.
They're the worst.
Oh my God! And they did an article that came out today. So not only did they print the same trash they printed before. It's worse because they got their facts wrong. They got their supposed facts wrong. I mean, they gave Joe less years. They gave me more years. They got the charges wrong. I'm like, oh my God. So not only are they printing the same trash, they even got their trash wrong. So it was comical. It's comical.
This is what's really happening, though, to our media, where people really are not doing the job. It's like they're being fed something, and it's exactly what you just said, Nacho and Joe. You guys brought up two really great points here about searching for the facts. Gary brought this up before with me. I am stunned. I am stunned at how people continue to repeat lies. This is about a human being's life. This is about your lives, your children, your wives, your families, your mother, Gary, everybody that's connected to you. And there's people that don't know you, these journalists that are out there. I mean, my job when I was a young journalist working at a paper, which is what I did before I, became more outspoken and more of a columnist investigator. But my job would be to find the truth. That's why I contacted Deborah Kanoff. Remember her? And saying you guys weren't allowed to pursue anyone. You're Border Patrol agents, but you're not allowed to pursue. I actually read that. So the audience understands. So all of you out there understand what they've been through.
And we weren't allowed to go after drugs too, remember?
Oh, yeah. You weren't allowed to go after drugs. You weren't allowed to chase anybody down. I'm like, what were they allowed to do? Just stand there and look like dolls?
Well,
was that it?
Thing, Sarah, you know what's crazy is, in the past 20 years, especially in the past 4 years, right? I mean,
right.
Look at what they've done to Paul Manafort, who's a billionaire. Look at what they've done to General Flynn, who's a general. I mean, what they did to Bernard Kerik, what they're doing to President Trump. He's the president of the United States. He's a billionaire. What chance did we have against the federal government? I mean, from the get-go, we couldn't have the best attorneys that money can buy. What chance did we have? Like that Brent Allen Gray, that civil rights trial lawyer told me in the bathroom. He has a $50 million budget to make sure I go to jail, and I'm going. It's just a matter of how long. And he told me that to my face, And it's just we didn't stand a chance.
Was it a message? Let me ask you this, because I agree with you, Gary, 100%. 100%. I agree with you. Something is drastically wrong with our justice system when you see something like this happen. And when I know, because I know every one of your stories inside and out, details. I know details that probably the regular public doesn't know because they haven't researched it the way Jose said. Do you think that you guys were all just pawns in a message game? I mean, honestly, because Johnny Sutton was the same guy, same man in all three of your cases, Western District of Texas. I don't want to rehash old stuff, but it's still happening to this day. And during that time, President Bush was really trying to pass immigration reform. They didn't want Border Patrol agents down there making arrests, shaking people down, numbers going up, people crossing the border, all of that. It almost felt that Border Patrol agents were being punished.
Yeah, we were
sure. And there's still one person missing from this group, unfortunately, and I'm praying that President Trump comes through, and that's Gilmer.
Gilmer Hernandez.
We're going to talk before I let you all off. We are going to talk about Gilmer Hernandez really quick, but I want to know if you believe, or what you're hearing on the ground. Do you believe you guys were like a message, like to the rest of the federal agents, like, hey, this is what happens when you actually do your job?
Back then, it was sure.
Absolutely.
Sure, we were.
Yeah.
Sure.
Johnny Sutton even said it on a Spanish TV interview. He said that this sends a message to everybody out there that, even if you're an illegal alien, you shouldn't have your rights, violated, because everybody in the United States has these rights. And to a point, I agree. Just because you're an illegal alien doesn't mean that you should, if you come across the border, you should be beaten on by law enforcement just because you're not a citizen of this country. I agree with that 100%, but none of us did that. That's my point. Johnny Sutton said one time that, there's good Border Patrol agents, the bad Border Patrol agents, and that Nacho, Joe, and I were not good ones, we were bad ones. So I held a rally in front of his office here in San Antonio, where 500 people showed up, and I called him out and I told him, well, there's good U.S. attorneys and bad U.S. attorneys, and you're not a good one, I told him that, and it was a big thing. And all this I was scared to do. I had to do it because I felt I had to do it, but I was still under probation at that time. They could have just signed a paper and threw me back in, but I couldn't let these guys go down like that because that's what they were trying to do, is send a message. And one thing that I got to say I'm proud of is that Johnny Sutton never thought that somebody they put in prison was going to come out and be a thorn in his side, you know? And like I said, be a big thorn in his side. Whenever they brought up his name, the veins would pop out of his forehead.
Right. I know. Because that's what, I mean, he really did. It affected his entire career. I mean,
well, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God it affected Kanoff's as well. She didn't get a judgeship out of this.
Yeah. She was the one that was working. So for all of you out there that are listening, is Deborah Kanoff, who I talked about in the very beginning of this. She actually worked for Johnny Sutton, and she was the prosecutor here in the case. She's the one that actually told me on the phone that their job was not to pursue, that they should not have pursued anyone on the border. That is unbelievable to me, guys. This is what was happening on our U.S.-Mexico border. And if you think things have changed that much, not so quick. Maybe under President Trump, we're seeing a lot of respect, a stronger border patrol presence, more law enforcement presence, but things can shift on a dime. This is all political. It's very political. That's why I believe listening to Nacho and Jose and Gary's story is so important for today. It connects to us today. This is, they deserve these pardons. These are men that served their country with distinction and should have never been treated the way they were treated. The fact that they are still good men, the fact that they are still who they are in their hearts, should tell you a lot about the character of these three men. They never stopped believing. They never once, and I feel like I'm going to cry here, they never once stopped believing in themselves and their family and their country. They may have been pissed off. They may have had bad days. I saw it. They may have felt depressed and saddened, but these men are good men. And this is what happens when good men stand up to bad men. And these people had power, and they still do. And that's why Gary brought this up. Gary brought up the fact that, have we exposed a two-tier justice system? How many people, Nacho and Jose and Gary, do you remember all of the signatures, the folk songs about you guys? People in this country were up in arms. I mean, they were sending, how was it, 500,000 signatures or something went to the White House?
A lot.
For your pardon? And
everybody was supporting us.
That's right. For all of you guys to be set free. And finally, begrudgingly, President Bush commuted the sentences. But
and by the way,
yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I don't remember her name, but here recently there was somebody on CNN, I believe it was, that was saying the people that supported us in the past were right-wingers. So of course, they were trying to make it political. But back then, it was a bipartisan support.
It was absolutely bipartisan support back then. This was not just about right-wing. This was not, nobody even knew about President Trump back then. It was just it was just people doing this job, doing their story. Back then I was, a daily bulletin reporter covering stuff along the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yes.
I didn't know anything.
And
I was in Washington.
And the biggest Democrat that was supporting us was Dianne Feinstein.
Yes. That's right. I forgot. You're right. Senator Feinstein was a huge supporter of yours. And Senator Feinstein, she was somebody that actually, because she understood the U.S.-Mexico border. That's one thing I'm going to give Senator Feinstein. Do you remember she even went down to San Diego and was walking through those tunnels? Remember those discovered tunnels down there that the cartels had put into place years ago?
I even wrote her a letter from prison thanking her because of the letter she wrote to President Bush supporting us.
Yeah, she was pretty amazing. She really stood up against, and this is what it is, folks. Back then, this was not a prosecution that took place by a Democrat. These prosecutions were Johnny Sutton, who had worked with George Bush when he was the governor of Texas in the governor's office. Deborah Kanoff. This was under a Republican. So this was not political.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just one more thing. About she's mentioned in a book. It's called Bombshell in the Barrio. Yes, and it talks about all the things that she's done while she's a prosecutor and we're not talking about the good things. And she was reprimanded here not too long ago for the illegal things that she's done. She should have been disbarred, actually, a long time ago, but she's been exposed for what she is.
That's this is it. The history, right? Like, what is that book called again? Bombshell in the Body?
Bombshell in the Body. Mm-hmm.
Okay, for everybody out there, get that book. I don't know who wrote it, but Bombshell in the Barrio is on my list now because I want to read about this. Because I got to tell you,
whoever wrote it can thank me later.
Yeah.
But
thank Macho. Exactly. We're gonna get book sales up for Bombshell in the Barrio, and Deborah Kanoff is not going to be happy with you. She's going to be like, she doesn't want all that coming out. This is what's so important, you guys, for all of you out there. It's like telling these stories and getting the truth out. You know, it's so easy to think like, oh, it's a government official, I'm just going to believe what they say. You know, that's the easy thing. The hard thing is saying, why do I believe you? What are you saying these two agents did? Show me the proof of that. Show it to me. You said they did this. Show me the proof. Right? And that's the thing. That's the thing. They never could show any proof of any of this. And that's where Bush got right into that last moment. And then they thought you guys were all just going to go away. Commuted sentence. Gary's no longer in the picture.
If they had the proof, they wouldn't have had to have lied to Congress members to try to stop helping us.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Now we have Gilmer Hernandez. And I know all of you, we were in a prayer group, before you even knew. I mean, it was like a week. Was it a week before? Yeah.
2 weeks ago, yes.
Yeah. So we were all, Zooming in a prayer group. I saw you guys over Zoom. And Gilmer was there, Gilmer Hernandez, and he went through a very tough situation, very similar to what you all have been through. His story is incredibly moving, and I know that he is also asking for a pardon. Is there anything you all would like to first say to President Trump while you're here regarding your pardons, and anything you'd like to say on behalf of Gilmer?
Well, Gilmer
go
Hernandez.
ahead.
Go ahead, Nacho. Go ahead.
No, as far as to President Trump, I can't thank him enough. I never thought this day would come. So, on behalf of me and my family, from the bottom of my heart, the deepest and most sincerest thank you. I wish I could shake his hand. Obviously, I probably will never get that chance, but, I wish I could shake his hand. And as far as Gilmer, I reach out to him, every other day or something, and tell him, hang on, keep the faith, and just know I'm praying for him, because his situation was pretty bad. He was already cleared by the Texas Rangers, and when you're already cleared by the Texas Rangers, you can feel pretty secure that you're good. And then you have this idiot Sutton come at you because he can. That's just pretty bad. Later. Yes, almost a year later, and then to have your world turned upside down. So yeah. I'm really hoping President Trump takes another look at Gilmer.
I'm definitely going to be posting some stories on Gilmer and Gilmer Hernandez's situation. I'm going to bring him on the podcast as well, so that he can talk from his perspective and get his story out there, so that at least we could get his story out there, and maybe somebody at the White House can hear it, or the president will hear it and understand what he's been through, because I know he's been through a lot. Gary, anything you want to say to the president and any message for Gilmer?
Well, there is, but before that, I've been at this for almost 20 years, and the past couple of years, since my buddy Joe Paggs got me introduced to Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Adicott, who took on my case and filed my pardon petition.
Oh, I love Jeff. Yeah, great guy.
He took my case on pro bono because I'm a veteran, and him and Warrior Defense Project, and they've done a whole bunch of stuff, and I've kind of built up. I've been pushing this, and I've had people printing out my pardon packets and handing it to I know Corey Lewandowski got it twice from a friend of mine in Massachusetts. Eric Trump got it. Pam Bondi got it. And she would print like 10, 15 packets out and go to Trump rallies and give them out to whoever would take them over the fence. So I need to thank, a girl I grew up with, Diane, my friend Dennis's sister. She's awesome. I've got friends across the country who have printed the packet and given them out to Don Jr. I mean, they've pushed it. So many people have sent tweets and emails and everything to the president. If I can't possibly name everybody at once, because there's hundreds, probably thousands of people who've done this over the past 20 years. Gilmer, hang tight. It ain't over yet. One thing that scared us, with this whole phony election fraud that's been going on, because that's what it was, is that the chances we had for a pardon that we really thought we can get got cut down by 4 years. It went from 4 years to, like 78 days. So it's like, oh man, what do we do now? So, thank God that President Trump saw it and read it. And President Trump, I cannot thank you enough. You've changed my life, and I knew you would. I knew it from the get-go. I knew you would. I had no doubt in my mind that if you saw it, you would understand it. And again, when I got the news, I cried so hard that my mom thought somebody died. My mom was like, "Me, what happened? What happened?" It's good, Mom. Just hold on. And I can't thank you enough. I ask that you take a look at Gilmer's pardon petition again, and I look forward to the day that I can stand there and shake your hand and salute you as well, sir. I mean, I can't even start to thank everybody, because we'd be here for another hour at least.
And Jose,
Easily.
I know. I believe that. I know. And Jose, how about you?
Just words aren't enough. I mean, you can say thank you so many times, when it's still not enough for how grateful all of us are, really. It's just, like I said, it's just unbelievable. 15 years, 20 years, waiting for this, for this day, waiting for it to happen. It finally did. Like I said, there's just really no words to we can't thank him enough. We're all praying for Gilmer. Still, he's next. I know it's coming. Hopefully by the end of the year. But like I said, I know his is coming too, and we'll all be able to celebrate.
That's right. And I will make a point of getting down to Texas and being able to celebrate with all of you in person. I miss you all so much. Your stories are remarkable. You're remarkable men. I'm so lucky to have had you in my life and to have you in my life. Nacho, didn't we all make a promise that we were going to go to Disney World or something when way back in the old? We did. I swear we have to get the vaccine. And then, or whatever, you guys could be fine, whatever you want, but let's do that. Let's do it.
The kids are much bigger now. You'd have to you're going to see a different family picture. That's for sure. But I am the smallest in the family now.
Oh my gosh. That's so great. And Ryan could be in his uniform. I got to get a picture of that. That's so great. I know.
He can.
He's got a job. He can pay his own rent.
Sarah, let me tell you one thing. Thankfully, Joe and I spent only 2 years of our sentence outside of prison.
Right.
And waiting the remainder of these 13 years for a pardon. Mm-hmm. Even though we were outside of prison, it was still we still did our sentences.
Right.
We still did our sentences.
Right.
Because it was a cloud. It was a cloud that hung over us.
A feeling of never being free, right? A feeling of
and the thing is that
20 years.
Right.
Right.
And the thing is, to our credit, we persevered. So
you did.
Anybody can say whatever they want about it. We got what we wanted, what we deserved, and we made it. And we made it this way. Because my kids didn't use this as an excuse for anything. They held true to what they were taught. Joe's kids held true to what they were taught. And, they didn't take the bad road to anything. My son's a police officer. My oldest son has his own business, and my youngest is, making his way. So,
well, they had good parents to look up to and to be a role model for them. And that was the reason why in the very beginning, I was willing to do all of your stories. That was the reason why in the very beginning, you had so many people that loved you and supported you, people that saw through all the lies, people that were willing to fight for you and see the truth. Tara, I don't want to forget Tara Setmayer, who also, in the beginning was huge. Tara did an enormous amount of work to fight for you guys and still does, and was in tears the other day. She loved you and still does very much. And I know that, and I do too. So I want you to know that whatever you guys need, and by the way, Disney World is still on. I don't feel complete closure until we actually do that. So I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a way to make this all happen. But we are going to have a picture together, all of us at Disney World with our giant kids now, their families, and then we're gonna celebrate such a great, victorious end to 2020. I know you guys have been through a lot. Nothing's ever going to give you back that time, and that was taken from you, and what happened to you. Nothing will ever give that back to you. But now you have a way to start free, and you are free and to move forward. Whatever you need, just let me know. And I hope you all come back to the Sarah Carter Show. These guys are my friends.
Thanks for having me.
Always, sister. We love you. You know that.
I love you all too.